Hello and welcome to the INSS podcast. I am Ofir Winter, a senior researcher at the Institute for National Security Studies at Tel Aviv University. Today we are honored to be joined by a special guest all the way from Cairo, Dalia Ziada. Dalia is an Egyptian writer specializing in security studies and geopolitics, and she is also the executive director of MEEM Center for Middle East and Eastern Mediterranean Studies. In this episode, we will delve into a critical and timely subject, the Gaza conflict, Egypt's pivotal role in it, and the far-reaching implications of this conflict on regional affairs. Dalia, we truly appreciate your presence with us, especially during these challenging times.
Thank you so much, Ofir. It's my pleasure to be with you, and I think this is the right time to talk because it is a challenging time.
Indeed, welcome. So here is my first question. As you know, and we all know actually, Egypt has traditionally played a significant role in previous conflicts in Gaza, given its geographic proximity and involvement in ceasefire negotiations and also reconstruction efforts. However, the current situation is somewhat different as the conflict has escalated into a full-scale war this time. Against this backdrop, how do you analyze Egypt's policy and the interests so far?
So to understand why Egypt is showing a little bit indifference towards what's happening in this war right now compared to its previous situations with other similar conflicts in between Israel and Hamas, we have also to look at the domestic situation in Egypt, domestic politics. We have elections coming up in about 1 month, in early December, and this the current president is actually running for these elections with relatively little popularity than he used to. Simply because of the dire economic situation we're living right now, things are just getting worse. Nothing is improving in terms with economics in Egypt. So I think the economic situation is creating some kind of pressure that's affecting the popularity of the president. And accordingly, this lack of popularity by the president, he wants to compensate for. So he cannot just come out and keep the old rhetoric of, yes, Israel is a friend and we are supportive of Israel at a time when the street is very heated up by the idea that the Palestinians should be fighting and we should side with them. So if he said this, he will have this unpleasing confrontation with the grassroots audience at a time when he cannot afford doing this. So I think the state is, or the Egyptian leadership is facing a difficult time now of trying to balance between the domestic challenge, the desire to gain more popularity before the upcoming elections, if we can even call it an election, to be honest, but to increase the president's popularity once again over the coming period. And third thing is to keep relations with Israel. So that's why Egypt does not want to intervene with its heavy weight in this war on one side or the other, but rather focusing only on preserving our national security. And here comes the point that actually some officials, either former officials or current officials in Israel, are bringing up points like we want to move Palestinians to Sinai and we want to empty Gaza. And believe me, when everyone, literally everyone, those who are supporting Israel, those who are supporting Hamas, those who are supporting the state, everyone here is against this idea. So
this is a very important, sorry for interrupting. This is a very important point, and I think it's also a difference in this current conflict comparing to previous conflicts in Gaza. The issue of the displaced Gazans that potentially may enter into the territory of Egypt in the Sinai. And I think it's also very important to explain to our audiences and to if you can provide some more insights about the Egyptian perspective on this issue. What are the reasons for the Egyptian concerns and reluctance to host displaced Gazans? And can you clarify also to our listeners whether it is actually a red line for Cairo, or there is some room for flexibility on this issue from an Egyptian perspective?
To be honest, it's not really a red line, but it's one of the worries, one of the concerns that everyone is having here about how we're going to handle this. Like, are we going to have like all the problems that are now happening in Gaza exported to us in Egypt? This is the point that everyone is asking. And by the problems being exported to Egypt, we're not only talking about the economic burden of having more and more refugees in Egypt, but most importantly is potential of military confrontation or another war in the future between the Palestinian people who will be residing in Sinai as refugees and Israel, which sooner or later will get Egypt involved, even if it doesn't want to, in confrontation with Israel. This is a scenario I think that the state or the Egyptian state is trying to avoid by all means and at all costs. But let me actually go back a little bit, as you mentioned, like previous examples. In 2014, and even in other episodes of the Israel-Hamas war before that, we usually seen at times Egypt opens the Rafah crossing, border crossing, and allows Palestinians to enter. And in 2014 in particular, the Palestinians returned it back as soon as war was cooled down, they returned it back. So I don't think there is a fear like, if the Palestinians came here, they will never leave. No, we know they will leave eventually if they have the opportunity to go back to their homes in Gaza and the situation will be safe there, they will leave. But the issue is how to avoid being dragged into a situation that will hurt our national security, how to avoid Hamas militants from, again, using their existence in Sinai, hiding between the Palestinian people or Palestinian refugees there to form new terrorist cells similar to those that were formed in 2011 and 2013 and were actually targeting the Egyptian soldiers. So all of these new calculations or, concerns are now in the minds of the Egyptian state, and the irony here is that even the Egyptian public, the people who are very, very supportive of Hamas and the Palestinian cause, and they go making protests about it all the time, and like carrying the Palestinian flag with them all the time, they also reject this idea. They don't. Yes, we will support them as long as they are on the other side of the border, but we will not allow them into Sinai. So it's very briefly how everyone is thinking about it.
Yes, I think it's clear. I want to ask you, I read an article that was published recently by your center, the MEEM Center, and it was not you that wrote it, but it was stressed that all stakeholders, including Western nations and Arab countries, should share the responsibility of finding a resolution in Gaza. And I would like to ask you, what potential roles, in your opinion, can Arab countries, especially Egypt, but not only Egypt, what potential roles they can play in resolving the Gaza situation after the war?
Actually, what's happening now is that most Arab countries has realized that their national security is very much dependent on the national security of Israel, not dependent on particularly resolving the Israel-Palestine conflict, that's mainly because in the past 10 years, we have seen that Israel has proven to be like a good friend and a good neighbor to most of the Arab countries. And it helped both sides, the Arabs and the Israelis, to improve and to be better in many ways, economic ways, political ways, and in many ways. So most of the Arab countries today, they want to keep this going on. They want to keep this positive momentum going on. But at the same time, they are having like this conflict with how to make sure that the Palestinian cause or the Palestinian issue will not keep coming up from time to time and disturb this movement towards the positive development of having regions that includes Israel in it without problems. So we have, I think that somehow interprets why most of the countries in the region now are kind of turning away their heads until Israel gets done with Hamas or do the work to finish Hamas. So they are waiting. But at the same time, we should start while we are waiting, like Egypt, UAE, Saudi Arabia, and all the other key players in the region are waiting. They should start planning for what should happen next. Start planning, not necessarily for like find an ideal solution for the Israel-Palestinian conflict and so, because I don't think it is doable. Like this has been going on for decades and no one has been able to reach this point yet. And I think the situation is not mature yet to reach this point, but at least they can start thinking of how they can start thinking first of making like some kind of a coalition, regional coalition, and also maybe looking at the wider region, not only the Middle East region, but also maybe including the Mediterranean region as well, and make these coalitions that could enable them to ensure that the peace train will keep going on, despite the fact that the Israeli-Palestinian conflict will not be resolved soon, and not to make it a condition that to keep the peace train going, we have to resolve, we have to change this mindset. And the only way to make it happen is actually by including more and more players who have stakes in this. You know what I mean? I'm not sure if I'm expressing myself well, but
no, it's very well. It's very understandable.
Yeah, what I want to say is that now is the time to organize ourselves. Yes, Israel is now at the forefront fighting with Hamas, not on behalf of Israel alone, but on behalf of everyone in the region. Really, Hamas and the Islamists in the region has been a big threat to everyone in the region, not only Israel. So Israel is now at the forefront fighting with Hamas. Meanwhile, the supporters of peace, the supporters of the idea of including Israel in our region as part of the region, not as a foreign body in the region, but as part of the region, should work on this from now on, how to avoid the collateral damage that may result from the wars that's happening now, and most importantly, all the peace treaties and peace agreements that has been signed, all the positive relationships with Jordan and with Egypt. And actually speaking about Jordan and Egypt, I would have loved to see Egypt taking a more assertive role in this, but unfortunately, again, Egypt now is very heavy weighed by the many internal conflicts that it has with economy and political situations.
I would like to ask you on this issue, do you think that Israel or the international community can encourage Egypt to actively take a positive role in Gaza following the conflict, a wider role? Of course, it already has a major role in Gaza, but do you think it's possible, and how we may encourage Egypt to take more responsibility?
Of course, like the international community can help Egypt do this, but Egypt should step up first. The Egyptian leadership should come up first and say, I'm here to mediate. I'm willing to do something to resolve this conflict and make sure that the day after will be as peaceful and positive as we want it to be. And then the international community will respond, and then the regional leaders will respond, and all of them will line up behind Egypt and push Egypt forward to take this leadership role. But I don't see like there is a will right now in the Egyptian leadership to take care of this or to take the initiative on this issue. However, there is a very good opportunity for Jordan to play this role right now, except that also Jordan was not a traditional leader it was, but for a limited extent, but it was not like Egypt, I mean, in terms of dealing with this conflict. So Egypt has first to figure out that it needs to step up, and then I'm sure like the international community and the regional leaders will be behind it.
I see. I want to raise a question which is a little bit painful from an Israeli point of view. You already mentioned that over the past decade, Israel has shown friendly approach to Egypt during very challenging times that Egypt went through, such as cooperating against terrorism in Sinai and collaborating in the Gaza sector. So, there was a profound impact of the October 7th terrorist attack on Israel and a loss of many innocent Israeli lives. And some Israelis have wondered why Egypt hasn't extended a similar level of support to Israel during this challenging period, and not even fully condemned the Hamas attack. What, in your perspective, could be the reasons for this approach? You already mentioned the internal difficulties that Egypt faces nowadays.
Yes, believe me, it's not only painful to Israelis, but even to me. I was shocked, like why Egypt did not like condemn what Hamas did to the Israelis. It's brutal. The other day I was attending a video conference with the Israeli Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and they showed us some like footage of what has been happening and how like innocent civilians, totally unarmed, like sitting peacefully in their homes, and they were targeted by the Hamas militants. It's scary and horrible and horrific in every way. So I was really shocked, like why Egypt shouldn't come up and say, like, we condemn this. Egypt was very shy in condemning what Hamas did on October 7th. But again, this has to do with how the leadership is looking at the very loud voices inside among the grassroots citizens who are supportive of Hamas and supportive of or sympathetic with this Palestinian cause, quote unquote, they believe, like, they still believe that, and even those, ironically, even those who were calling Hamas like terrorist organization because they targeted our soldiers in the past few years, and so they now are starting to call them resistance movement in our media and among the people, and so it's a little scary for me. But if you look at it from the state leadership point of view, maybe they wanted like not to lose one side and like not to take very clear sides. So they chose maybe to vaguely condemn the killing of civilians, this sentence that everyone was saying without actually saying Israeli civilians. So they condemned the killing of civilians, but at the same time, they didn't actually support Israel in its fight against Hamas, and I don't know, it's a very complicated situation here, and I think there is a lot of fears, there is a lot of concerns. Maybe Egypt want to keep balance, so in the future it will be called upon to mediate between Hamas and Israel. Maybe Egypt is scared that Hamas may launch attacks. Hamas and its affiliated terrorist organizations, I mean like Hezbollah, Houthi, and so on, may also launch attacks on Egypt or try to harm Egypt in any way if Egypt took side with Israel. But if we look like on the ground, in reality, all Egypt's interests, economic and security-wise, are dependent on Israel and vice versa.
That's true. I want to put aside for a moment the official approach of the Egyptian government and to focus on the Egyptian people. Can you provide insight into how the Arab public, if you follow, and particularly, of course, the Egyptian population, perceives the current Israel-Hamas war in Gaza? Can you identify diverse viewpoints within the Arab or the Egyptian public opinion?
Oh, yes, of course. There is a lot of differences. It's not like what you're seeing on social media, like, this craziness. No, it's not like that. But to understand this in general, like very quickly, I have to go back a little bit, some 20 years or so, when the region was ruled by some dictators who liked to exaggerate the Israeli-Palestinian conflict to distract the people from their internal problems. We have seen this, for example, under the Mubarak era, like the headlines, the main thing on TV every Friday is about Palestinian being killed and, oh, look how poor they are. Like trying to create a lot of sympathy towards what's happening in Gaza and a lot of hatred towards Israel. Until today, unfortunately, like speaking about this, we are still celebrating war every year, the anniversary of war with Israel every year, rather than celebrating the anniversary of the peace treaties that we signed with Israel, which is also very interesting to tell you how like people are somehow being educated by media over decades, not only a few years, but over decades, that Israel is the enemy and will always remain the enemy. So when you try to change this now over like the past 5 or let's say 10 years or so by showing people that Israel has already been a good partner, we have been working with them and they have been very friendly, they are good neighbors, they never hurt us even when we were so weak in the aftermath of the Arab Spring. When you look at all this, like now you're bringing this and this new reality and trying to change the mentality of the mindset, the social mindset that has been there for decades, it's very difficult. So yes, it was changed just a little bit, especially after people saw that Hamas entered Sinai in a very weak point in our history and so. But now, as soon as like a new war has started in the Israel-Palestinian conflict, all of a sudden we are seeing like people going back to what they always believed, like Israel is the enemy and Hamas are the good people. Again, as if like nothing has happened in the past 7 years, or they have not seen the truth with their own eyes in the past 7 years. So it needs a lot of work. That's why I think the media war is as important as the actual war on the ground.
Yes. We are getting closer to the end of our discussion, but I want to ask you a little bit personal question. I think you have been one of the only public figures in Egypt to openly criticize Hamas for its horrific action against civilians, Israeli, but by the way, also Palestinians in Gaza. And I would like to ask you, you know, when you try to understand the silence of many people in Egypt, and also, as you mentioned, support of Hamas by Egyptian religious figures, journalists, some politicians, what is, you think, is the one thing that you understand and some others fail to understand about Hamas crimes against humanity, actually?
Yes, actually, I think the key point here, and first of all, thank you, but I'm not the only voice. Actually, there are some voices. It's very, very limited number of people who are saying this, but maybe I have like access to wider audience. That's why my voice is a little louder. But the reality is that what people like me understand is that what we have seen with the Muslim Brotherhood, this horrible experience we had when the Muslim Brotherhood ruled Egypt, and our direct interaction with them, Hamas at the end of the day is part of the Muslim Brotherhood, and they are thinking and adopting the same mentality, which is they don't care about something called a homeland. They don't care about a state. They don't care about people even. In other words, if the Muslim Brotherhood ever cared for the well-being of Egypt, I would now believe that Hamas would ever care for the well-being of the Palestinian people. For the Muslim Brotherhood, the Egyptian people were, especially the grassroots people who were very much sympathizing with them, were used as fuel to their conflict with the military, with the Egyptian military in 2013 and 2012. So they used these people. They did not hesitate to kill them. They did not hesitate to put them in situations that exposed them to great danger, just use them as fuel to gain sympathy, international sympathy, and to win more ground in their conflict with, more political ground in their conflict with the Egyptian military here. They don't care about states. The only concern is like to make the Islamic Caliphate system. They don't care about borders. They don't care about land or anything. The same applies, this same mentality on Hamas. They think on the same, exactly the same way. They don't care about the Palestinian people. You see their leaders coming up on TV all the time and saying, yes, let the Gaza people die. Why should we be sad? Like, let tens of thousands of them die at the end. We will be achieved. Like, if this is the fuel, they said it actually, if this is the fuel we need to achieve our goal, okay, let them die. They don't care. They don't care about the innocent Palestinians, the kids, the children that are now being killed. They only care about how, let's make a lot of bloodshed. So this bloodshed will make us gain more sympathy internationally and give us legitimacy, like, or give our actions legitimacy. This is what they care for, to achieve the goal of establishing their Islamic state, regardless of where it is. Is it in Sinai? Is it in Gaza? Is it even in Israel? Is it in other lands in the region or beyond? That's what they care for, their Islamic Caliphate, not Egypt, not Israel, not Gaza, not anything. So I think this is what the people really need to understand, and many people don't understand. The perception here in the street, like when people, like they say support Hamas, I mean in the Egyptian street and the Arab street, is that they are thinking that Hamas is fighting for the Palestinian cause, but this is not true at all. If they really care about the Palestinian people, if they are fighting really for the Palestinian people, they wouldn't have did the October 7 massacre at all, because they know very well, even a child could tell you this. If you go and attack Israeli civilians like this, of course you should expect a retaliation. And Israel is doing the things that any country in the world would do if its citizens were attacked on a holiday and being killed in their own houses. They will target the terrorist organizations that killed their people. Yeah, this is normal. I mean, but the issue is now fully twisted. The media is twisting everything in the Arab world and in Egypt in particular. I'm sorry to say that, but they are twisting everything and trying to make it appear like Israel just woke up in the morning and decided like to kill the people in Gaza, and they are just this savage government that is doing atrocities and so on. But the reality is not like that. And Hamas are not the good people. Hamas is the evil people that is an evil organization. Actually, let's for a moment imagine a region without Hamas. Let's for a moment imagine how would the relationship of Israel could be with everyone in the region, not only Egypt, but everyone in the region if Hamas was not there. Let's imagine how the people of Gaza and the Palestinian people would have been living happily now if Hamas was not there, having at least a human life if Hamas was not there. But Hamas is the curse that we have to get rid of.
Yes, I totally agree. I would like to ask you a final question. From your perspective, given all the important insights you shared with us about the public opinion in Egypt and in the Arab world in general, what steps should us, I mean Israeli government, but also ordinary Israelis like myself, take to better explain our position to our neighboring countries during this time of war?
That's a very good question, actually, because I think what's happening now in Israel, that I can see like most of the people, especially those who are supporters of peace and who has been in contact with Arab youth and Arab academics and so on in the past few years, are now retreating, are now maybe hesitant to contact with them. But I think no, now is the time to contact with Arabs. Now is the time to reach out to everyone, you know. Now is the time to try to gain more supporters. Now is the time to educate the Arab people and especially the young people about the truth, about what's happening or what happened on October 7, about Israel intentions, real intentions of this war, and what Israel is planning to do for the Palestinian people after this war. not only for the well-being of Israel, but also the fact that Israel also cares for the well-being of the Palestinian people after this war should be conveyed to the Arab audience. Other than that, unfortunately, we'll be only listening from one side, which is the side of the bad people who are promoting hatred and exaggerating this negative image about Israel for their own reasons, you know. So more reach out, more communication, more presence on social media is very, very important.
These are all very important and good advices, and I hope that they will be also implemented. I want to express, Dalia, my sincere gratitude for your presence and insights and thoughts that you shared with us today. And I look forward to the possibility of meeting you again, perhaps in Cairo or Tel Aviv. Hopefully, of course, under much more peaceful circumstances. And until then, take care, and thank you again for being a part of this important conversation.
Thank you so much. Thanks a lot.